I was just like, when you were away there, Johnny, when we were having technical difficulties, I was kind of saying like, I don't know, I was kind of thinking like, bit of feedback loop. It's kind of like, just pretty psych.
Yeah, I was going to try and figure the rhythm out and just kind of like try and beat it.
Yeah. Well, I think you said you just have to kind of like only speak every now and then. Just really make your words count because there's going to feedback for like, But
it would involve a lot of like teamwork for all of us, and maybe like some like learning and like just making mistakes and learning from them, because I think that would be tough to do with 3 people if you had that echo going.
Well, we're all about learning on the job here.
It would be a tough thing for 3 people unless you were in like a kind of psych rock band in Vancouver in like 2009 or something. You know what I mean?
Like
then
Dead
it would
Meadow.
be cool. Yeah.
I played Dead Meadow. Played an open show for them once, and they went to soundcheck, and their soundcheck was 3 hours long.
That's so cool.
And they just jammed. They didn't do anything.
It wasn't a show?
Dude, that is so
Are you sure it wasn't the show?
It was at the Starfish Room, and it wasn't the show. And I was like, they're playing like an entire basement set.
Yeah, man, those were the days, I saw Dead Meadow open. Actually, this is pretty cool. I think I want to get the bands right, but it was in Manchester before I moved. It was like the summer before I moved to Vancouver, so like 2005. And it was Dead Meadow, Wolf Parade, and Black Mountain played a show.
Wow.
150 people. Real Vancouver, real kind of West Coast feel to that one.
Kind of early years for those bands, right?
Big
for
time,
Wolf
for all 3 of them, yeah.
Oh, you guys, there was no more whiskey, but I found like in the liquor cabinet like a little airplane bottle of Weiser's whiskey cocktail. It was called.
Wait,
it's fucking most putrid thing I've ever drank here.
What are you talking about? What's
like
wrong with
Fireball. It's like it's not just whiskey. It's like got a bunch of weird spices in it and stuff.
Listen, you take a transatlantic flight and lay down on your hotel bed and tell me that wouldn't taste good then.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, you're right.
Or
and
even just a flight from...
These are tough times, so
even
you're
just
right.
a flight from Vancouver to Montreal. I mean, that's a 5-hour flight.
Yeah, and then you just take a nap and head down to the pool or the hotel bar. The last time I was in a hotel, I went with my family, so my partner and my daughter, and it was in Quebec City. And I remember we chose this. I was like, well, we're getting a getaway. We're on a getaway. We should get like a hotel. And it was downtown. And I looked on the site to see what the pool looked like. And I mostly remarked, wow, that's a huge hot tub. And then when I got there, we went in and I realized it wasn't. It was just a really small pool. But when we walked in, there was a woman and a child and a man sitting in the hot tub. So we went to the pool. And we were like, okay, it's a family. But then the woman and child left, and the man stayed, and he had a Tim Hortons cup. And he was just sitting in the hot tub drinking Tim Hortons. And then while I was in the pool with my daughter, he got in, put the Tim Hortons cup at one end, and then did laps back and forth and would stop and drink from the cup.
That's the kind of cab energy right there.
Yeah.
Really great. Energy. So that, visit Quebec City.
I've been there. I've done it. Le Cercle. I've played there a couple of times.
Okay.
That's cool.
Do you guys know each other?
I actually do know you, but because, you're kind of like, you're a bit of a Vancouver kind of rare Pokemon, 'Cause when I first moved here, you were kind of like, I don't know, kind of the Roky Erickson of the scene.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, you were kind of, you were like, those were the glory days of Zulu, right? So
I guess, the final sort of...
And you were kind of managing it or something, or you were kind of in some kind of position.
He was the floor manager.
Yeah, you were in some kind of position of authority, and kind of had an Empire Records vibe in there. I thought, as a man from a country that's takes its record stores slightly differently. You kind of had that Zulu, for anyone who's not from Vancouver, which is most of the people who listen to this record store, kind of had a Artie Fufkin, Polymer Records kind of feel to it back then.
That is huge, because before I worked at Zulu, I worked at Sam the Record Man in its kind of final days.
Yeah.
And it really was kind of the very end of that era.
Yeah.
So it's nice that I was able to sort of bring it with me into my next stint in a record store.
Yeah, exactly.
Grimmer was my boss. Our guest today, Jason Grimmer, was my boss at Zulu Records for many years, and great friend. We played in a band together, didn't we, Jason?
Two.
Anemones.
Hard to say.
2 bands if you count the Countless Jibes, who were the Zulu Records house band that everyone on staff, and when I say everyone, I mean everyone, was in the band. We had about 10 members, 4 guitarists. I think Nick Bragg played a little trumpet and cymbal.
What? I don't remember that at all.
He had a trumpet on stage when we opened for Mudhoney, man.
I don't remember that.
He was blowing something. Remember, he'd hurt his hand.
No, I don't remember any of this. He hurt his hand playing the trombone?
No, he couldn't play guitar because he'd hurt his hand. So he brought a trumpet and just like kind of blew on it on stage. See, this was a big night for me because I was a, bushy-tailed. That was the first big gig I'd ever played, I think.
Is that true? That was the first big
sold-out show at Richards, like Mudhoney. I was 21. That was pretty big for me.
It's your first night drinking, your first night everything for you that night, if I remember correctly.
I remember Nardwar said we were better than Mudhoney that night. The Human Serviette.
He's normally right, I hear.
I remember when Mark Arm came on stage and said, and I remember watching him off to the side sort of pointing and laughing as we played.
I don't think they liked it, really.
And then he came on stage and said, I was able to count them.
Oh, yeah.
I once played a show.
Those guys showed up in 4 separate minivans with like sporting equipment.
I like that look.
In the back. He got off work and drove to Vancouver for a show.
From Seattle, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that look. That's a cool look. I played a show one time and Chris Murphy was side stage watching, but he was only there for like the shit song we played, and it was kind of bad timing. He watched and sort of fucked off,
I think that's the story of anybody who's like, you're playing a show and you're like, oh, I reckon, this isn't a great show.
He's not
going to
watch us play this one. This one's the one that we keep fucking up. Yeah, exactly. Asking him to stick around. He could play,
I remember.
He once, he once said that Yukon Blondes, he said to us one time, hey, you guys, I've heard that you guys sound a lot like Sloan. Like, kind of almost like he's like holding his ground, you know what I mean? And I wanted to say to him, I was like, hey, well, I heard you guys sound a lot like the Records. But, I didn't want to, kind of be that guy, to a
he would
Canadian legend.
Be like, go and grab Jay and be like, Jay's going to have a chat with you.
Yeah,
maybe.
Or he'd just be like, let's settle this on the stage.
Partner.
Yeah. Or a hockey game.
Yeah.
It's something else.
Yeah, they play hockey, right? And stuff.
Yeah.
One time I went to this is a real impossible way of life kind of thing. Paul Hawley from Hot Hot Heat, my buddy.
Real estate agent Paul Hawley?
Yeah. Now he's a big shot realtor.
Yeah.
But he was playing in a celebrity hockey game out at UBC, like a rock and roll hockey game.
Rocky.
It was like, the guy from Blue Rodeo was the captain of one
All
of the teams.
The guys.
Keeler?
Great. Hell of a centerman.
Yeah,
you should have seen him dipsy doodle dangling. And Paul was awesome, big, because he's a big, tall,
big boy,
drink of water, and he was a fierce-looking defenseman. And I remember I went backstage, I mean, like to the locker room after, and everybody was there. I think maybe even Gord Downey, or I forget who else was there, but there was a lot of.
I don't
was
think Gord Downey
playing?
Was there.
Yeah, I
don't
think so.
He was there.
I could be wrong. Paul will correct me on this.
And everyone
he
except for
show.
Gord Downey, surely.
Yeah.
That's weird. Like, I don't think I missed one of those, man, in 20 years. I always went to Canadian celebrity indie rock hockey games, so I must have missed that one. What the hell?
That Wisers, man. Don't for those of our UK listeners, of which most of our listeners to this podcast are from the UK, Grimmer, because James is the star of the show.
Okay, cool.
And for those of you listening, don't try Canadian whiskey.
No, it's big. They have it over there. We have it.
You don't need it though.
I don't like Canadian Club either.
Tastes like Coca-Cola.
Yeah, this tastes a bit like Diet Coke is what I'm drinking.
Yeah. Aspartame.
That's still a cool thing to order, though. Oh, the Diet Coke. No, if someone said that, I'd be like, yeah, nice.
Anorexic girls, I think.
Yeah.
I think
Mountain Dew or
that's
something.
the only people.
What do you want with your salad? I'll have a Diet Coke. Great.
It's expensive.
Maybe I'll have one too.
It's expensive in restaurants on the gun, right? That's why people.
Yeah, you can't sneak your own can in.
No, anymore.
But there's probably people that are very much into that, right? They're just like, I got my own can of Tab.
I used to work with a guy.
They bring it?
I used to work with a guy who had like he drinks a 6-pack of Diet Cokes during a shift, and he'd say, and he'd be really aggressive about it and be like, "Well, you all fucking drink coffee, man. It's the same shit. It's just how I stay caffeinated." I'm like, it's not the same, man. It's just not the same.
I can just bring a cooler of my drink.
You drink coffee, yeah.
Yeah.
Would have a nice, refreshing Diet Coke with my cigarette.
Does anyone know anything about Iggy Pop?
I think Jason does, which is why it's great we've got him on the show to teach us.
Weird.
See,
I like him.
So the thing is, Jason, is that maybe I don't know if you've listened to our podcast before, but what you should know is this is the podcast. Welcome everyone to Impossible Way of Life, the classic rock podcast that teaches you nothing about classic rock
That you didn't already know.
That you didn't already know,
Or could find on Wikipedia.
And the podcast that anyone listening could easily do themselves, if not better than the way we do it. Yeah.
Oh, it's inspiring.
Yeah,
super
and
inspiring.
also, so the way we generally prepare for our episodes is we do about, I want to say 10 to 15 minutes of research on this website, wikipedia.com, on whichever album we're choosing. And so, when we have people like you, what I like to call scholars on the show, we like when you teach us about the music. So,
sure. Geez, I didn't prepare too much for this, so I'm just going to be going on instinct on this. So,
but I know you love this to be one of your favorite artists. Am I right?
I think it's true. I think thinking about it recently, I actually started believing that it was true. I think I just took it for granted all that time, and it was. I think it's mostly because. The first thing I'd heard was that record that came out that was called Choice Cuts. And it was, I think, exactly 1/2 of Lust for Life, and the other side was 1/2 of The Idiot. And so I think it actually works out well the way they split it, but I listened to that, and that was the first thing. Then it was Stooges later. So I heard kind of like almost the first song I loved by him was Fun Time, which is kind of this weird, gothy, strange chant. And then over time, I think he just was part of the whole my musical existence.
Is he the godfather of punk?
I think he is. You guys read Wikipedia? It's got to say that somewhere, right?
I'm gonna check.
We got a few things.
Godfather of punk.
Is he MC5 adjacent?
He is. I think so. At that period of time, you had MC5, you had the Stooges, and then around that time, Alice Cooper, the Alice Cooper band, the original band.
Yeah,
and
Hollywood Vampires.
And Bob Seger. We're all kind of the Bitch Rider and the Detroit Wheels.
The only bands in America with those 4 bands at that time.
Yeah, especially if you lived in Detroit.
Yeah.
What's your favorite of those?
I thought Alice Cooper was from Phoenix.
He moved around. He might have been originally, but he was part of that Detroit scene earlier. That band was part of it, and then he moved to, I think, LA, because then he got the whole Zappa thing happen.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously, it goes without question that you understand that Alice Cooper is a PSYOP covert agent from the CIA that was planted in Laurel Canyon by Frank Zappa along with Jim Morrison and John Phillips.
Yeah. You think Jim was involved in something with Alice Cooper? I mean, that's some Hollywood vampire shit.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah. Well, exactly. But also, James, as much as you are correct about that, everybody knows that stuff. I thought Alice Cooper went to LA for the golf courses.
Yeah, he's a scratch golfer, right? Too.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where he discovered it, because he showed up at Capitol Records. You know that Capitol Records building?
Yeah.
Sort of famous, iconic landmark.
Sure.
Yeah. And they have an info booth, and I think that's sort of how he found his way around.
He found a brochure for Pebble Beach.
Yeah.
And he thought...
I thought you were going to say they had like a mini golf course inside the building or something.
I think he had one on his airplane.
That makes sense.
And
that makes total sense.
And lines of cocaine.
We did an episode. It came out today, actually, Jason. The last one was on the Hollywood Vampires.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And we actually, it's good we're doing Iggy Pop today, because it said, it says sort of honorary members, because, back in the glory days, and Iggy was actually an honorary member of the Hollywood Vampires. Whenever he was in LA, he'd like to go out carousing with Nilsson and Keith Moon and the gang.
Is kind of
I'm talking about the new Hollywood Vampires with Johnny Depp, that band with Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper.
Well, same thing. You know,
okay. So
that's
it's just
the sort of corporate takeover.
Joe Perry, I think, is in there too.
Joe
guys.
Perry's in there. Yeah, it's Joe Perry, Johnny Depp, and Alice Cooper, and they do cover versions of classic rock songs, just kind of like to raise the dead. You know?
Well, they're continuing on, Jason, what the original Hollywood vampires did in the 70s, you know, John Lennon.
I know. I had to ask those questions to make sure you guys were on the same page.
Yeah, you know, Johnny Depp, you know, he's in every way possible continuing the canon of like a John Lennon musically.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I've read interviews with people, with Alice Cooper specifically, where he's saying Johnny Depp's the real deal. You know, he'll go toe-to-toe with Joe Perry every night. It keeps him on his edge.
I always kind of think of Jack White as Johnny Depp's familiar.
That makes sense, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and kind of like, there is certainly like a group of men within sort of popular culture of his age that kind of have sort of bestowed upon themselves the duty to like let people like know about music. You know, like Jack White's kind of like he's
using
one of
their
those
power,
guys,
using their
for good. You know,
well, for sure, it's music.
Yeah. Dave Grohl kind of does that. He's kind of does that kind of thing where he's like, you know, he wants to let people like the kids know about, you know. I read an interview with Johnny Depp where he's talking about like he wants people to know like kind of about like the deep cuts you won't hear on the radio.
Yeah.
You know, kind of songs
the
like
stuff they won't play. The in between,
like Cold Turkey, Manic Depression, you know, things like that.
Whole Lot of Love,
Whole Lot of Love, Purple Haze, stuff like that.
Heroes, David Bowie, the ones you don't know.
When I listen, as I used to work sort of in the literature industry, I like to call it lit industry, and you know they talk a lot about art being a constant conversation with itself through over a period of time.
Yeah. Oh, I lost you there.
Yeah, I lost Jason.
Do it again, because I'll edit it out. Do it again, because you were talking about you were saying like writing being a conversation with itself. I just lost you for a second.
Writing and art in general are sort of in a conversation with themselves, so you can you're dealing with, you know, the ghosts of literature. You're dealing with Virginia Woolf or Ernest Hemingway when you're writing, because you're answering questions that they first posed. You're
within the canon.
But how did you get to Morrison Hotel from that?
Yeah.
Well, because then I started, before it cut out, I was saying to you that in a way Johnny Depp and people like that are really kind of providing a service. In a way, the map has been made by these landmarks.
Right.
Like those out, the Morrison Hotel or Shakedown Street.
Yeah.
Okay, Shakedown Street.
And I think 100%. It's like,
sure.
So someone like Johnny Depp, who uses
Metal
his
Machine
fame,
music, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Uses his fame to sort of pinpoint and go, hey, these places are, this is where it is. This is where.
Do you think
bless him. And the blues, and you know the blues. That's what I
was going to bring up Robert Johnson. And
that's what I feel like. You know, if there's anybody who. Yeah,
today,
if there's anyone equipped, I think, to teach the world about the blues, it's people like Johnny Depp, Jack White, you know what I mean? Eric Clapton in the 80s, you know. But these are the people.
True. You know, it's Robert Johnson's birthday today.
Oh, wow, that's
How
amazing.
uncanny is that?
It's very uncanny.
Well, actually, no, that brings up another point, Jason, and since you're here, because you were kind of, you know, an aficionado of the Vancouver kind of psych scene in the mid-2000s, you know, you'd have seen, and you're working in record stores, you'd have seen the likes of like Jack White, kind of Black Keys, those kind of guys like coming up, right? Like, and that was, we've talked about it before, like that was kind of the last great blues reset.
It was the last time they dared.
Yeah. Do you know about the blues cycle?
What? The blues cycle?
The blues cycle is what I call it. I've coined the phrase, which is that blues kind of goes in it goes like this in a circle, where it starts out that people are doing kind of authentic, you know, traditional blues, kind of Robert Johnson you know, that kind of stuff. Acoustic, not a lot of effects, not a big band, raw sounds,
on the stoop,
emotion,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, like out on the porch kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, people take it to the next level where they add a lot of effects,
electrify it.
Exactly.
Electric
backup
mode,
singers,
basically.
keyboards, horns, add a
Keyed
lot of
up.
stuff. Yeah, get it more keyed up. And then everybody's like, they make a lot of money. It's still super successful.
Then it kind of goes blue chip.
Yeah.
It goes full blue
Right.
chip, corporate blues.
Corporate
kind of,
blues.
Hard blues, kind of Clapton blues, unplugged even.
Yeah, and then everybody says, hey, this isn't blue. This isn't real blues, down-home authentic blues. Let's bring it back. And then people like a Jack White or something come around and they're like, yeah, I'm just going to build a guitar out of a tree stump and show you what the blues is really all about. You know what I mean? And then it kind of resets, and then it gets back into this, then somebody else
So you were
comes
kind
out
of there for the last blues resets, what I'm saying. You were kind of working in a
I
record
was.
store.
I mean, I played a show with the Black Keys.
Yeah.
And I went downstairs. I asked them I said, how do you dare? How do you dare this?
To
and
do
they
it, yeah.
didn't answer me because they were going right on, but they played a two-man blues set.
Yeah.
And one guy, and I mean, people watched it.
Yeah.
Another time, White Stripes came.
Yeah.
And then we were asked to open that show.
Yeah.
And my friend Alan said, oh, no, we're recording. And I think that had I been there, I probably would have seen like some more two-person blues.
Yeah, exactly.
Served up. And
That's it. Strip it down, right?
and early blues was acoustic, and I couldn't hear, so the electric thing came in.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
once they got that, it just went running, and that's why it's great to see. I don't think are there any blues bands since that?
Well, I don't think that it's important necessarily to hear it. I think you have to feel it, right? I don't know even like with real blues. I don't know if like listening to it's important. It's just identifying with it as like
Well, you're
as
explaining
a kind
it.
of, and
Explaining
and you're right.
it is what, that's important too.
It's like you say, like it's I don't know, like it takes real kind of imagination and dare to get up there as a two-piece and just serve it raw,
Yeah.
Mama's home cooking, that kind of thing.
And everyone's waiting for the bass, but the bass isn't.
It's not coming. Sometimes
It's not gonna come there.
Well, that's the
Hey,
first
let me tell you
thing.
something. Original blues, no bass.
No.
Okay?
Do
the
your
first blues,
research.
no bass.
I actually thought when you were talking about recording, so you didn't play with the White Stripes, the real blues, the real raw bluesian move would be to be like, you know what? We are recording. Record the show, because that's what we sound like.
I know.
that's-
It was something we talked about afterwards, and I said,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into it because Alan and I are good friends, but
Yeah.
it wasn't very bluesy of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One of my favorite blues bands was Velvet Revolver,
They were really...
but they
yeah,
weren't
yeah.
two-person. They weren't two-person. That was a full
but-
band, and that's a real situation where you can see a full band kind of really work with the blues in an interesting way.
Yeah. I mean, they're summoning something, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Something manifested itself.
Do you think, getting back to what you were saying about Jim Morrison and Johnny Depp, do you think that Johnny Depp is, for want of a better word, channeling Jim?
Who? Of course he is.
He's channeling Jim. I think because everyone knows that he channels Keith on a daily basis. But I'm just wondering if he's also channeling Jim.
It's the same. It's the same thing.
The juju.
Keith, Jim. It's the same thing. You're talking about the skin shells of the blues.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're going to, it's the same thing. I mean, Johnny Depp's not going to differentiate between that. He's going to just say to you, it's the same goddamn thing.
It's the same thing, man. And so if he's doing that, is Mayor Clapton?
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
He considered himself more Jerry Garcia, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's
Which
Shakedown
is
Street.
actually
He's kind of more
very
Shakedown
strange,
Street.
if I could be honest, because Garcia is considered by many to be an insult to the blues. Because he tends to
citation,
stray.
please.
He tends to stray from the traditional pentatonic blues scale when he
Yeah.
plays guitar. So a lot of blues
Mixolydian.
players say
A lot
no,
of mixolydian.
no, Jerry, you can't play those notes if you're playing the blues.
Yeah, but
okay?
he knew something that seems like most people don't. Who else didn't play the notes?
Yeah.
Well,
The devil.
They certainly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Do you think then,
So they're channeling that.
if we're kind of like going full circle here, do you think Iggy Pop is a blues artist?
I think he's a blues artist at heart. He's definitely channeling, and let me just use air quotes because no one can see this, Jim Morrison. But we've now discussed and discovered that that's an entity. That's the blues. So he's definitely channeling the blues.
Can I read you guys something here? Because I always thought, I don't know much about it, but I thought Iggy Pop, punk bands, Stooges, all that stuff. And then I was very interested to hear, it all comes from blues. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All of it.
Yeah. So here we go. So I thought, it says Iggy, after exploring local blues bands such as the Prime Movers, eventually dropped out of the University of Michigan and moved to Chicago to learn more about blues.
Yeah.
While in Chicago, he played drums in blues clubs, helped by Sam Lay, formerly of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band.
Hard blues, I'd go
who
as far
shared
as to
his
say.
connections with Pop, inspired by Chicago blues, as well as bands like Sonic's MC5 Doors. He formed the Psychedelic Stooges and began calling himself Iggy. So there you go. There'd be no punk without blues. You heard it here.
Yeah. I mean, it's scholarly blues. That's just scholarly blues talk. It's the same thing. If you stop talking about it and start feeling it, you know it right away. Everyone knows what you're talking about. They're in the same vibe.
Yeah, and like you said, you think that like there's a point you get to in kind of your appreciation of blues and blues derivative music such as the Stooges that like you kind of hit a kind of Neo from Matrix kind of thing where everyone just kind of looks the same. It's just everyone
take the red pill, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just saying like maybe you look at Iggy and Jim Morrison, you can't discern a difference between them because you can both see. It's not ones and zeros. I guess it would be like. I don't know. They'd look kind of ancestral, kind of pastoral American kind of vibe,
Yeah, and when Jim passed his essence along, there was talk of Iggy doing it, and then there were a bunch of names. It was like Randy Newman.
Yes.
There was Al Jardine.
Whoa!
There were a lot of people that were considered.
Al Jarreau. I heard Al Jarreau was actually considered as well at one point.
I don't know. I mean, maybe. Yeah. It's endless. There's a website you can go to. It's like GeoCities. Who's the next Stooge, and it lists every sort of potential person. Jean Kasem, Casey Kasem's wife.
Right.
There was it was insane. They were casting the net far to get someone for the Doors. Yes. And they found out in the end that they didn't need to. All they had to do was wait because Ian Astbury.
Yeah, exactly.
From the Cult, right?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Well, Cult.
And when you look at him, you go,
makes sense.
This guy has lived longer than he looks.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Adrenochrome.
Vampire, dude. Dracula.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
It's funny. I was actually... Oh, exactly.
No, well, the Viper Room's the acting equivalent of the Rainbow. It's the actors' version of the Rainbow. So you got like the Hollywood vampires, Mickey Dolenz, Alice Cooper, Nielsen, Klaus Vormann.
What's that guy that played Gladiator?
Oscar Oliver Reed.
Yeah, Oliver Reed.
Yeah, but he's in the Viper Room with River Phoenix and Johnny Depp, and that's why Johnny Depp considers himself a vampire.
Well,
that's how it works.
Also, because David Bowie,
Christopher Lee's over there.
Yep.
That's
a lot
why
of the people that played vampires. If you did like a sort of a Venn diagram, you'd probably see quite a few crossovers.
Listen, we're all about Venn diagrams.
We're working
here.
on it.
We're all about.
Also, everybody knows David Bowie was one of the original Draculas.
Yes.
And it's funny
it's a different
because,
kind of Dracula. Johnny, maybe you can explain what that kind of Dracula is.
Oh, well, it's different being a vampire and a Dracula, Jason. So a Dracula is when you achieve a certain amount of status and success as a rock star after you're kind of like a vampire, that you're at the point that you're so famous and also so obsessed with your own persona and ego and career that you basically need the adoration, blood, and bodies of young girls and boys to feed off of and survive. So
so this is I've heard of this term bandied around on Twitter with especially David Crosby's Twitter.
Yeah,
I've
rock
heard
and roll
of it, but I guess I didn't know the
Draculas.
whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I explained it very well, but I'm talking about guys like Jagger, Bowie, Stamos, you know, like who
frontman.
Yeah, they don't age. They don't age.
Frontman.
The girlfriends get younger and younger.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Johnny Depp.
Dracula's blood transfusions, stem cells,
Yeah, I mean, you could have just said, take a look at John Mayer's face. And
pretty much.
Well, it's a bit different with John Mayer because he obviously, like, very famously did a lot of work on with Apple.
But I thought you were going to say
kind
Bette Midler. That's a different story.
No, John Mayer did a lot of work with Apple. So, like, he kind of, I mean, you're on GarageBand now, I'm assuming, and you can, a lot of those amps on there are, like, John Mayer simulations. So he's kind of,
I see.
So a lot of his kind of adrenochrome energy comes from Steve Jobs. You know?
Well, that's a bit different. That's more of a robotic kind of thing rather than vampire. Like he's getting kind of hardwired.
Yeah.
For his career, rather than the vampire thing is, more organic material keeping you alive. Whereas Mayer, Steve Jobs, it's kind of the Tiger Woods thing with Elon Musk building him a new back to play golf. Like these guys are becoming cyborg-like. Like
it's
Mayer,
kind of cyber vamps. Cyber vamps.
Yeah.
You know who the godfather of cyber vamps was? Billy Idol.
Billy Idol, yes,
for sure. Yeah,
exactly, same kind of thing. Yeah,
that kind of kind of Soylent Green kind of vibe. A little bit too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's a crazy thing. That's just like, and I think it's the main reason why people are still picking up these albums.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
What is the world's obsession with Iggy Pop's body, Jason?
He's small.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's like, I think he's just over. Well, he's only 5'1". He's a famous song called 5'1".
Is he really that small?
And as he says in it, what the heck? He's small. He deals with it, and then he's got a hair. He whips it around. He whips his hair around, so it gives a sort of whirling dervish feel. And he's wiry. He's wiry and very. A lot of abs,
sinewy,
and veins, abs and veins. A lot of
I feel like
viscera.
Every review I read of a Stooges concert or an album or anything, they talk about his body a lot.
Yeah. I think the last one I read was, this album sounds like a popsicle stick recreation of a wind walker.
Yeah. 2-word review for this one. Shit sandwich.
He's involved in the what we call lockdown rock. Did you know he just put out a song called "Dirty Little Virus"?
Nice.
Oh, yeah. And that's got to be about COVID.
Oh yeah. It says begins lyrics go COVID-19 is on the scene.
Oh my God.
Grandfather's dead. Got Trump instead. And then he says she's only 19, but she can kill you.
And then Van Morrison did his Answer record.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
where he asks, "Do you need to be on Facebook?"
Yeah, exactly.
Van Morrison started it all, Jason. Okay.
I know, but he had to bookend it. He had to. He saw. I have a feeling like he's responding to that record.
He's responding to himself. It's a great conversation that happens in art, which is you're like you say. Sometimes you're answering questions Hemingway left in Bimini. Sort of, and then also sometimes if you're like kind of keyed up on yourself as Van Morrison, you're answering questions you recorded only 2 months prior.
Yeah,
so,
just like
it's the same
channeling
thing.
Van Morrison face down in a mound of something.
Yeah,
in Woodstock.
Yeah,
it's definitely
channeling that sort of thing.
It's weird how like these lockdown records feel like they have a lot of like coked up energy. Like even though these guys are old and probably not really partying anymore, it still seems like it's like 4 a.m. and they're like, you know what, man, fuck, I want to play some. This would be a great idea. Like no more lockdown. Like let's party.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm reading here about the Stooges, and it says Iggy Pop attributes 2 key motivating influences to move the band forward. The first one was seeing the Doors perform at a homecoming dance for the University of Michigan. So how about that?
Love that.
Kind of corroborating what your kind of theory, which is that it's of a blues tradition. Well, I mean, the Doors also kind of, everything comes from blues, but one of the Venn diagrams me and Johnny have been working on places the Doors firmly in the clown music genre.
Clown music, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard this. I don't. Who are some other people in this clown music genre?
Beach Boys.
The Beach Boys.
Okay.
McCartney White Album onwards.
Most McCartney stuff. And then it really takes off in the 90s with, like a lot of the clown goof music, like, Sugar
Three Doors
Ray,
Down,
Sublime. Yeah. Offspring.
Matchbox 20.
Presidents.
That's
Ween.
But the Offspring's an
Ween.
interesting thing because the Offspring were an overt attempt to bring the blues back and dole it out to the pop punkers at the mall.
Really?
Right.
And so they really came into that. And I saw the Offspring on stage once in Calgary. I was backstage, and I was lucky enough to sit on stage and watch side stage. Well, actually, it was a big stage, so it was actually on stage. But there was a curtain, and there's a guy who goes in this curtain and sings high parts for the singer of Offspring.
Dexter
And when
Holland.
he came out, I kind of gave him a thumbs up, and I mean, he knew what was up. I knew what was up. It was great.
Yeah.
That's behind the curtains of the blues.
Were you on Noodle's side of the stage or the bass player?
No, I was on. I think I was on the singer's side of the stage, but he had a little tent behind him, so it was quite a big setup.
He's isn't he like an astrophysicist now? Him and the guy from Bling 182 both trying to get to the moon or something.
Yeah, he one of the first things he did with his millions was get liposuction for him and his wife. So that was kind of the first step because you got to be sleek when you're doing the blues.
Well, it's actually the only thing you can't do is get fat if you want to be a rock and roll star.
Yeah, talk to Blues Traveler. That guy did not make it, and it was because of that weight gain.
Yeah, it was.
It's funny how nobody knows the name of the singer from Offspring, but everybody knows Noodles.
His name is Dexter Holland.
Dexter
His name
Holland.
is Dexter Holland.
Well,
his name is Dexter Holland. His name is Robert Paulson.
Yeah, exactly. Fight Club's kind of a clown genre movie, I think.
It's a good movie, that, man.
It's a
I watched
clown
it the other
movie?
day. I thought it was a bit
Much?
dated. Yeah,
No,
a
I
little
don't
bit
think
much.
so. I think
It came from
so.
another time. It's not recent.
It's
Hey, welcome to
it's
Impossible Way of
pre-9/11.
Life. We're talking today about Iggy Pop's Lust for Life and The Idiot.
Well, he made it. I guess like we talk about Bowie in Berlin and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We could talk about that.
Well, I want to talk about. Got a couple things up here. Okay,
Johnny Payne. It's
Johnny
David
Payne.
Bowie.
David
Hello,
Bowie.
Johnny Payne.
Hello, Jason Grimmer. It's lovely to have you on the show.
That was wonderful.
So we have I was looking up a lot of cool stuff about Lester Bangs talking about Iggy Pop because he loves him, and I really enjoyed this.
It was a big one for him.
Beautiful quote from him. Some of the most powerful aesthetic experiences of our time, from Naked Lunch to Bonnie and Clyde, set their audiences up just this way, externalizing and magnifying their secret core of sickness, which is reflected in the geeks they mock and the lurid fantasies they consume. Just as our deepest fears and prejudices script the jokes we tell each other. This is where the Stooges work. They mean to put you on that stage, which is why they are super modern, though nothing near to art. In Desolation Row and Woodstock Altamont Nation, the switchblade is mightier and speaks more eloquently than the penknife. But this threat is cathartic. A real cool time is had by all, and the end is liberation.
I mean, it's pretty rad that. Like, I was going to goof off about it, but like, it sometimes a little bit of Lester Bangs rules, man.
No, it's rad, but then I wanted to follow it up, James, with what David Crosby had to say about the Stooges, which is kind of a move of yours. David Crosby on the Stooges, pretty much all dumb stuff, no musical value at all, and mostly childish lyrics.
At least they had lyrics, David.
Yeah.
David famously turned his back on the blues because he couldn't fully understand it.
He also got into jazz and did so much freebase, so much cocaine. He thought he was like on a level with Fagan and Becker and Coltrane.
Yeah, for sure.
He thought he was the vocal Coltrane. So he's kind of like post bluesian. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of where he
went. His voice has that spiritual searching quality that Coltrane so famously laid down in sessions.
Well, it's just, I mean, it's like it comes from him, you know, all the sailing he did. He's a seeker, you know.
People can criticize him all the time.
Yeah,
you know, I think
it's
it was
easy to criticize him, but
Jim Henson said he was a human coughing fit.
Really?
So I think people trash him all the time, and I think that I mean, I don't think he understands what he's doing, but I think he's taking a break from it.
I also think that his acting career has been grossly underappreciated. His work in Hook was phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, people talk about
Smee?
Johnny.
Yeah, Smee. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wasn't she in the organ?
Oh, we have to ask Jason about that.
I know. That's what
What's
I'm
that?
thinking.
Yeah, Smee was in the organ.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was right after they changed their
Smee,
name from Full Sketch. Then they became Smee joined.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bowie had done Station to Station, right? And then he invited Iggy Pop on the tour to party and like get a sense of like
for
what
ballast, blues ballast.
Yeah, exactly. And then they went to Berlin to clean up, which actually they went to the heroin capital of the world, as Bowie says. But I've been loving this Lester
Blowtown.
Yeah. Well, no, I thought it was an H-town. They were getting out of Blowtown.
Yeah.
I think there's both.
Yeah, they do all that fucking shit.
Up, down,
anyway,
all
but
around.
I enjoyed all this Lester Banks stuff was killing me. That was a great quote. Hey, sorry, James. I know you wanted to say something about it.
I
but
didn't
was
want to say
trying
anything.
do
I
like
just genuinely thought it was pretty cool. Like I was like thinking about like, you know, that golden age of journalism. I suppose
that's what I say.
When they
and
like
how
the
now,
journalists
I mean, I
were
had
like
some
more
Pitchfork
important than the
stuff, too.
musicians or something. It's kind of weird. It's fun. You know.
Well, okay, I got a couple more things here you guys will like then, because like I heard a track from Young Americans yesterday, and thought that it was phenomenal, and thought that it's one of my favorite Bowie records, and I liked to hear Lester talking and saying
kind of bluesy actually.
Young Americans wasn't Bowie dilettanting around with soul music. It was the bridge between melancholy and outright depression, an honest statement from a deeply troubled, mentally shattered individual who even managed, for the most part, to skirt self-pity. Like many of his peers, Bowie has cracked, and for him it was good because it made him cut the bullshit. Young Americans was his first human album since Hunky Dory, and in my opinion, the best record he ever put out. And this is what he
That's
had to
why
say.
he made so much money. Bangs made so much cash off this kind of writing. He was just good. He knew how to explain it.
And this is what he had to say about Station to Station, the next one.
Okay.
This is the first Bowie album without a lyric sheet, and I'm glad. The first line on the album is the worst. The return of the thin white duke throwing darts in lovers' eyes.
Yeah.
Somehow, back in rock critics training school, when they told me about pop poetry, I didn't and still don't think that they were talking about this, which is not only pretentious and mildly unpleasant, but I'm currently wrestling with a terrible paranoia that this is Bowie talking about himself. I have a nightmare vision in my mind of him opening the set and his new tour by striding out on stage slowly with a pained look in his eyes and one spotlight following him, mouthing these words. And quite frankly, that idea terrifies me, because if it's true, it means he's still as big an idiot as he used to be and needs a little more cocaine to straighten him out.
Well, you know, it's interesting because later on in that exact same song, he sings the line, "It's not the side effects of the cocaine. I'm thinking that it must be love." So, you know,
I got a cool quote from Diane Keaton here about Bowie's Low.
Great.
Listening to Low, you hear Kraftwerk and Neu, maybe some Ramones, loads of ABBA and disco, but Low flows together into a lyrical, hallucinatory, miraculously beautiful whole, the music of an overstimulated mind in an exhausted body, as rock's prettiest sex vampire sashays through some serious emotional wreckage.
There you go.
That's Diane Keaton. She won an Academy Award for Annie Hall.
Yeah, and she's a big Woody Allen supporter still to this day, actually. It might have changed since the HBO documentary came out. Woody Allen is a kind of rare New York Pokemon. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of like, I'm not categorizing you in the same sense as that's not what I mean to do. I'm just saying you're both Pokemon. Like, you know, you're in New York, you want to see that guy. You know, you're like, fuck, I saw one of them. But, you know, I feel like, you know, you're one of Vancouver's. You know, Bachner is too. You know?
Who?
Dan Bachner. He's a kind of Vancouver Pokemon.
Okay, sure, yeah, of course.
You know?
Is he out there now?
No, he's with.
Or do you know?
I think he's with you. I don't know. I think he's in Montreal. I don't know.
Oh, I'll see if I can find out. That's someone that's continuing to the blues.
He's kind of dirtbag left blues though now. You know,
you can't leave blues. Are you joking with me?
He's got a Patreon. You know.
Mm-hmm.
He's he's fraternizing with like Chapo and Cumtown and that kind of Red Scare and all those kind of podcasts. Kind of our contemporaries.
Oh, okay.
We're just doing for the blues what they do for I don't know, the Sanders administration or something, or like but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
kind of doing,
totally get it.
That kind of thing. Yeah. Really nice day in Vancouver here today, by the way, Jason. How was the weather?
Great. It was okay here. I still wanted to get a little warmer, you know.
Yeah, we've got board shorts down at Kitts Beach. You know, I want to talk about Iggy Pop. I really do. But I was thinking, actually, when was the last time you were out here?
Probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, it was one of my favorite things to do, and it annoys and aggravates people who aren't from Vancouver. But because you have one thing that people from Vancouver do when they get back together with each other and talk is like they like talk about things, and it's like, oh yeah, like 10th and Main, and then it's like, oh yeah, right next to that old kind of Vietnamese grocery store, yeah, that place, and then it's so is there anything you want to know, any kind of areas we could kind of like
you're mapping
have
the blues.
A memory about?
It's mapping the blues.
It's mapping the blues in a way. Yeah, like you said the Starlight Room before. I mean, that's long gone. Richard's long gone.
Morrison Hotel
never was here, I don't think, in that form. I've been to one in Portland. I still don't think it was the real one.
Hey, Jason, remember when somebody spray painted Grimmer is God down on the seawall?
I do remember that, and you mounted that campaign. You guys got together and put a song out. And
well, I said, everybody... Well, the campaign was actually take it down, and I was one of the ones who was like, keep it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you were vocal.
You got to be really careful saying things like Grimmer is God, because Clapton is God, and he's got a hit list of people he's come after who've tried to take his place within the blues tradition as the most technically gifted blues
He'll
guitarist.
kill for a lot less than that. He'll kill for a lot less than that.
I was watching the film The Color of Money the other day.
I've seen it.
Which is a Martin Scorsese film starring Paul Newman and Tom Cruise.
Fantastic film.
And then Mary Elizabeth Mastro-Antonio.
I'm back.
And in it, Paul Newman is a washed-up pool champion.
Yes.
And he sees this kid played by Tom Cruise who's a real hotshot, and he decides to teach him. And throughout that movie, you're treated to like this real updated barroom blues from Stevie Winwood.
Little Stevie Winwood,
Stevie Winwood and Eric Clapton.
And Robbie Robertson.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a Robbie Robertson soundtrack.
It is.
Yeah, and Werewolves of London. We got some Zevon on it, I think, if I remember correctly.
But do you guys remember, like, this song? This is the first blues song I'd ever heard as a kid, was that Stevie Winwood. And now pay attention, because you can see he plays a little bit with the blues form. Okay. It's in the way that you use it.
Yes, exactly.
And you know it.
Yeah.
I thought that was Clapton, but,
Well, they played together. They played together in Blind Faith, so
it's the same. This is the thing we keep running into. Is it's the same thing?
It's all.
I do mix
blues.
up the names.
Can I ask you?
You might
Jason,
as well say Morrison and go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I remember you knowing a lot about blues when we worked at Zulu together. Remember, you even showed me that there was a movie you liked about blues, about guys starting a blues band. Do you remember that? What was that called? You remember that old thing?
There's a movie about Low Down Dirty Dogs.
Low Down Dirty Dogs. Yeah, it was about blues. And
it was about a blues band.
There was a great scene where they were like, two guys were in jail together, and the guy's like, "Hey, you want to start a blues band?" And he's like, "Yeah, man. What do you play? Guitar?" And he's like, "No, bass."
Yep, so exactly.
It's just after so it's not right at the start of the blues continuum. It's about 2 years in.
No, it's smack dab in the middle.
But it's involving bass, though. It's kind of...
No, yeah, exactly. So it's 80s. This is about kind of early 90s.
Oh, it's hard blues. It's hard blues.
Yeah, it is hard blues.
Look, you want to... The thing is you want to play what you want to play, and if you want to play the blues, you got to play a party. because people expect a party. So you got to sell it as a party. That's why you have the Fabulous Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
And
you got to pay your
Shuffle
dues
Demons.
too, right? To play.
Yeah,
play
you
the
pay your
blues.
dues. Johnny and I were going to start a blues band. We talked about it. We never Blues Crab, and it never really
Blues
sort of.
Crab, yeah, Blues Crab. That's right.
And we were going to book a gig. We had cased a place, and
Baby,
it just
let
didn't
me
happen.
mow your lawn. Right?
I guess you
That was one
what,
of
like
the
maybe
songs?
at the Yale. You're gonna
The
play
Yale,
maybe the Yale
before
would've been
it
a good
closed.
place
That
for
was where we were gonna do it.
or
yeah.
maybe the Fairview pub,
No,
Fairview.
it was like someplace down by
the river,
English Bay.
down by the river. Yeah.
Oh
Like
yeah,
a real
the cab.
classic joint.
Yeah, down in the basement there. The jazz. Yeah, the cellar.
Someplace where the real. Because we went to a couple places, and I was like, "This doesn't feel right," and you said the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, if you're gonna start channeling, you need to make sure you're in the right kind of environment because there's really some rough stuff out there. If you get it wrong, you don't want to open up like a portal or something.
Yeah, you don't want to get people thinking too much.
I was once on Galliano Island, and I was kind of just playing a little bit of had my acoustic with me, and I was out there with a friend of the pod, Rob Butterfield, and we were kind of jamming some 12 bar. And
He's got a bluesiest name of anyone we know.
And so there's like a point, that's the point, kind of ticked by his name, and we were kind of there, the sun was going down, it was a pretty swampy night. And I was really feeling myself, and I felt connected, and I was pretty sure I was channeling. And a deer kind of walked in to the kind of picture frame, if you can imagine that. And I'm pretty sure it was as Dionysian as it gets, and I assumed it was Jim Morrison.
Wow.
Well, I mean, the same thing happened to him in the movie, so why would it not be?
Yeah.
Sometimes lightning can strike twice.
Sometimes it can, yeah. Especially if you're kind of, working with the elements.
You
Or
know what
within.
Within the elements.
That's an
your
old
element.
Dungeons and Dragons mantra.
In the elements, within
Working
the
within the
elements. Yeah, exactly.
So.
Well, what we've discovered recently when we've been doing our extensive online research, mostly about blues, is that a lot of people consider, like, technically, people like Eric Clapton. Who else is on that list?
Just like the white
maybe
ones.
Stevie Winwood.
No, Peter Green, maybe Stevie Ray Vaughan, maybe, to be technically the greatest blues technicians on the guitar. And these people have a vitriolic hatred for guys like Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, who kind of throw caution to the wind when they play. Maybe there's
Jeff Healey.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're wondering, what
Robert
do you think
Cray.
what do you think that
Robert Cray.
What do you think technically being a good blues guitarist means?
Being a technical blues guitarist.
Like, technically, Clapton, according to these people, is the best. What do you think that means?
I think it depends on the show you're booking, but I think most times if you're talking about technical, you're talking about the word technique. But I think some people get mixed up with the word technique because they think it's all about the sort of learning. But in reality, it's about leaving the space, and it's about sort of being in the moment. And it's about hearing what something's saying to you. Because in a lot of ways, and I think it was one of the guys from Hackamore Brick that said that in the canyon, you're hearing the blues no matter whether you want to or not. And I don't even think they were from California.
Yeah.
So they knew something that we didn't know, and it's reverberating all around the canyon.
Yeah.
And I think that you can say, it's like the echo thing earlier. You can choose to sort of fight it, or you can find the rhythm and just bomb it.
One time I did so much acid that when I was playing the drums, I started playing the space in between the drums and not the actual drums themselves.
When that happens,
I saw that happen with a Econoline Crush once.
Yes.
They're blues. They're
one of those
definitely
guys
blues.
is trying to sue me right now, actually. So that's interesting.
Oh, great!
I'm not able to talk about it on the pod, but I think I'm being sued by someone who.
And I don't think you should.
No, out of respect
just
for
write
their,
a song.
Yeah, exactly.
If I could say one thing serious, is that when we're talking, what I was thinking today is about Iggy Pop and David Bowie is what a great collaborator David Bowie is, huh? You got to give it to that guy. No, I was just
plays
thinking
well with
about
others.
How cool it was that like all the people he hooked up with, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, Queen, Stevie Ray Vaughan,
Mick Jagger,
Kate Pearson from the B-52s,
Nile Rodgers, Trent Reznor. Like he's just, and he seems like he really wanted to help people and he really wanted to work with them and like get the best out of them creatively. You got to hand it to that guy, huh?
Yeah, I think that like legit.
Wait, are we talking about Bowie or Iggy Pop?
David Bowie. David Bowie.
David. I think that,
you've got it.
I think that it's interesting. This is like kind of almost like a serious thing. Because we were talking about the vampires and Laurel Canyon and that kind of whole scene, but like it is interesting to me how David Bowie never shows up within that kind of lore. Like he's legitimately like he's not ever. You never hear about him hanging with anyone like John Lennon and stuff. He's never there with Lennon.
Well, no, Lennon in New York though with fame with young
but
Americans.
It is like exactly. It's like he's in this counter scene in New York. It's at the factory, I guess. It's like with Andy Warhol and stuff. And then he like in that moment decides to go to Berlin. Like that's the cool vibe to me. Yeah, that's the vibe. Yeah. Like legitimately, it's like, you know what? The soul, like kind of like the corporate commercial soul of rock and roll music, or like even though it's like more confessional folk music, is moved and everything's going on all Canyon. And I'm David Bowie, I can just fucking get in there. And he's like, nah, I'm going to Berlin with Iggy. I'm gonna, and Lou Reed. He's completely uninterested, and I think that's like a sweet vibe. That he kind of carved his own fucking scene. You know what I mean? And his scene is like way more disturbing and dark and vampire-y than the Hollywood vampires scene at the Rainbow.
Well, where do you go if you're a vampire? Europe, you're Eastern Europe.
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking about like the late 70s when everyone was going through some sort of question about the blues and questioning where it was going to be, where it had been.
Oh, finding
had it been here long? Did I hear it today? Am I hearing it tomorrow? And I think someone like Bowie can look at California and go, I don't need, like, it's a nicer place to be.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a nice weather. They have great weather.
Yeah, great.
And there's lots of stuff to do, and there's friends that you can do stuff, and lots of recording studios. And he goes to Berlin as a specific choice because he sacrificed himself for the blues.
Yeah. Certainly for art and for blues and kind of for drugs.
Well, Iggy Pop, I love the idiot. The cool thing is that it's basically a David Bowie record, right? Like, that's the thing. Bowie felt bad because
I tend to think that the rest of all the Bowie records after those albums are all just Iggy Pop records.
Interesting.
Right, exactly, yeah.
What about Eno, though?
What about him?
What does he come
Eno's the great interloper. Eno shows up to the party, tells everyone he's here, starts a game, and then goes, I got to leave halfway through. And who's left to clean up the mess? Brian Ferry.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, also kind of like maybe he shows up to with a card game to the party. He brings his oblique strategies. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he brings maybe his like Lexicon Primetime, turns it on, gives Daniel Lanois a call, says, you go pick this up. There'll be a record done
long
by the
distance
time this party's over.
Yeah.
So.
And then what do we have? The Unforgettable Fire, right?
Yeah. Lanois,
Neil Young. I wondered,
Joshua
what does Neil Young think of David Bowie and vice versa? And Iggy Pop. Like, I feel like they'd kind of all respect each other, or would David Bowie say that Neil Young was good for a laugh?
No, I think he'd like Neil, because Neil's caustic and raw. There's a raw energy to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd get it. He gets it.
He'd get it.
I mean, you're talking, the only true American there is Pop, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you ever heard there's a famous thing that came out, Jason, of George Harrison? They didn't know the cameras were rolling where... who's the guy from the Boomtown Rats? Bob Geldof says to him, how into the new Neil Young album he is. And
like
George
Live
Harrison
Rust
says,
or something? He's into Live Rust or Rust Never Sleeps.
Yeah,
or
Live Rust or something. And George Harrison says never liked him, and he said never liked his voice. And Geldof's like, oh, but his guitar playing's so great. And George Harrison says, yeah, it's good for a laugh.
Yeah.
We were shocked.
So much for his Ashram.
Someone left. There was a hot mic on during this conversation.
There was a camera. I'll send it to you. It's crazy, man. Because I love both of them. George and Neil, probably my top guitarists. You know what I mean? Like, it was crazy.
Yeah, put that in a Google Drive and share it with me.
Well, I just was thinking. I was just thinking about asking you about, Montreal and kind of, moving there and thinking that's pretty neat that you did that. And, you know, like you can kind of be an artist there, right? If you want.
I mean, you can get away with doing. You can make mistakes here.
Yeah, people
Is that
don't
the place where
yeah.
you can be a punk forever in Montreal?
Yeah, that's it's on the license plate. Être un punk pour tout le monde.
Do you think that it has a Berlin energy?
I think some people would really like it to have that.
Yeah, because I always think when I'm there, it kind of
when you hear Arcade Fire, don't you think Berlin?
You certainly think. I mean, they did stuff with Lou Reed. You know,
did they?
And Bowie, I think.
Arcade Fire tried to continue in the canon of like Bowie, like what Bowie did and Lou Reed and all that. You know what I mean? But then they sort of messed up when they started wearing all those animal costumes and stuff.
Well, they also kind of they were doing art, like art rock, but then they accidentally they kind of fused it with kind of pilgrim music, kind of like, you know, Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
Stuff
big
like
mistake.
that kind of like
big mistake.
which no one had ever done before, and they also had like lots of like Cirque du Soleil Keb energy, so it was like anti-cool as well, so like all those things kind of created a perfect storm for a minute, which
you're either
people.
Listen,
Like,
they still walk around town all together at the same time.
Yeah, wearing like fedoras.
Listen, Jason and James, you're either a pirate, a pilgrim, or a pagan. And if you're not those, then you're carnival genre or you're clown, okay?
Which are just subgenres of
But
pirate.
you cannot, I repeat, cannot be all of the above.
No. It's like it's like the Ghostbusters when they cross their streams.
Yeah.
Carnage. That's how you end up being the Arcade Fire.
I was lucky enough to be in a room with Arcade Fire and David Byrne once. David Byrne from the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
And it was for a book release.
Was he wearing a massive suit?
He wasn't.
Was it the book How Music Works?
It was. It was that.
It's dead good.
And
that
backstage, now, when you do literary events, rock stars don't like to deal with audiences very much because they talk too much and they get excited. So they don't want to do book signings in front of people, so they do them backstage. So he was doing the book signings, and then Arcade Fire, because Win Butler was interviewing him, came and took the books and started doing their own signing on them. And then we had to take them out and sell them. And so there's people out there with collector books, I guess, of that are just signed by various members of the Arcade Fire.
Weird. And Win Butler can dunk, too, can't he?
They play a basketball, yeah. It's that's Montreal's hockey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
Celebrity basketball.
Yeah, exactly. Which is cool. I was going to say it's like, I guess the problem for someone like David Byrne in that scenario is that, you know, he's trying to be taken seriously as an author, but people kind of assume because of his career as a musician that he's a musician, so want to talk to him about that, but he wants to talk about being an author. It's probably a much similar experience for someone like John Stamos and Johnny Depp, who are famous for being actors, but always really considered themselves musicians.
Well, and in the case of David Byrne, he's also a performance artist.
Yes.
He's also a dancer.
Yeah.
He's also probably a sculptor.
Yeah. He's done a lot.
Yeah,
and
he's an actor. He's an actor, too.
He's a Renaissance
and an activist.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a science.
Plus, he's a musicist.
He's for science.
He wrote The Scientist by Coldplay. Possibly.
Sorry, what's that? Something about Coldplay?
Yeah, I think, well, those guys are in the news right now because they're, I've got a nice article I read about them, actually. I think you guys will like this. I think it's
I'd like to hear about that.
Well, it's just a heartwarming
I didn't know
story.
they were back in the news, so I'm interested.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a heartwarming story. You kind of humble kind of thing. I really like. See if I can pull this up here. Might be tough because it actually looks like Vom Cruise has been finally kicked off Instagram. So we'll see.
What?
It's going to be. Oh, what? I think. Well, we'll see. So he gets kicked off every now and then, and I'm trying to.
Who does?
Yeah, my friend Sam. it looks like he's been kicked off.
Oh, not the singer from Coldplay.
No, but basically it looks like we might have just live seen Sam finally get kicked off Instagram again.
Oh, it's
for
one
making
of our
fun of
friends
Chris
of the pod.
Martin. Anyway,
is it Chris Martin that did him in?
Maybe.
He has a meme account in England, Jason.
He's on our podcast a lot.
He's a great friend of the pod, the best meme account on the internet, but constantly getting kicked off Instagram for talking about the royal family and apparently Chris Martin.
And he posted a thing earlier today we were talking about where Chris Martin said that COVID has really kind of made him kind of have a reckoning with his own fame and how much he thrives off it and how it's the wrong way to behave and how he needs to get kind of back to his roots, back to just being a guy. So what he decided to do with his new Max Martin produced single was debut it on the International Space Station.
Yeah.
In an attempt to just kind of everyman his career in the right direction. So I kind of like that story.
So you're telling me that the 15 to 20 people that work on the space station got to hear the song first?
Well, I think he did a Zoom with them, kind of much like we're doing right now, but with the people.
Well, if I was, that's amazing, because if I was in space and or anywhere where I was doing a job and it was a slog, and a superstar of that caliber came on to play a new song, I would tune in.
I'd probably listen.
Look, I think you're missing the point, Grimmer.
Oh, sorry.
Because what it is that, look, what he's trying to say is that in space, we're all the same.
Exactly.
Okay? In space...
James is saying that, or Chris Martin?
No, Chris Martin is saying...
I'm a vessel.
In the
I'm
grand scope of the universe, there's no money, there's no anything. We're all the same. So where better place to debut your new song than in a place
I hate to point out the flaws in your logic, because you're such a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
But did everyone else get to hear the song at the same time?
I think that...
they have a satellite link up.
Also,
you know what I mean?
Much like we discussed earlier on, it's not really important whether you hear it or not. It's just whether you believe in it.
Right.
That's kind of like where he's at. He's kind of transcended through the blues, through music, to this kind of pure Ashram Swami kind of awakening, oneness, where his new Max Martin produced single, he feels like he's just trying to, quote, stay level about everything. I'm trying to just live my life right now and not attach too much to being a pop star, not trying to get my self-worth from external validation. And I think the best way that you can kind of live that truth is to kind of play your songs in space to nobody and everybody at the same time.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I think he might have reached out to Bono for that advice.
Yeah, Bono.
I think what he's basically saying is every once in a while you have to check yourself.
Exactly.
When I people in the '60s talk to me about music, and they've seen things, and they go, "Oh, I saw Crosby, Stills and Nash, and it was in a canyon, and I remember the smell of the air, and I remember what my wife was wearing, and things like that." And when I think of the '90s or the 2000s, when I saw, Archers of Loaf
or something. Oh, okay.
I would be like, oh my God, I can picture, I can smell everything, and I see it. And I think today, what's really important to realize is this is happening to people of all ages with something like Coldplay. And for them, that memory is just IKEA or coming home from IKEA.
Yeah. That meatball fiasco when they were horse meat balls at IKEA. Just that kind of stuff. The IKEA monkey.
The horse meat where you were, they shouldn't have listed it like that.
No. Johnny, what are you having for dinner?
Chicken.
Well, I mean, there's many different ways
dinner.
You can skin a cat. So.
You know what I was talking, it's funny, Jason, I don't know if you remember this one time I was working at Zulu and a woman came in and asked me for, she said she was looking for, some Motown stuff. And I said, yeah, sure, a guy. She's like, Philly soul. And I was like, well, actually, Motown's from Detroit, and she was like, no. Yeah. I'm talking about Philly soul. Motown, Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross, Smokey Robinson. Philly sound, the Philly sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, actually, that's Detroit, Motown, and she was like, look, I'm from the 60s, so don't tell me what is Philly soul, and she stormed out.
Yeah.
Because as you know, the Delphonics, the OJs, those guys, they're all from Detroit.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, in some way, it's all from the same place, right? Again.
It is.
I remember once being at Zulu and the phone rang and Nick Bragg picked it up. It wasn't early in the morning. The two of us were there, and I heard him quickly talk to someone or just quietly talk to someone on the phone. And at the end of it, he hung up and he said, and I heard him say, "Keep on trucking." And I asked him what he said, and he said the guy was asking for some Grateful Dead.
Nice.
So Nick, who knows the language of rock,
Right.
said, their most famous thing. And then the guy said, "I'm going to come down there and kick your ass."
Basically, it's about taking as many people as I can with me at this point, that kind of feeling.
Yeah, and so he wasn't a true Deadhead, and Nick went home for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened one time when I was listening to Tommy James and the Shondells in there, and somebody came in and they were like, "What is this fucking garbage?" He said, "I'm from the 60s, man." And I was like, "Okay, I'm not too sure what you mean." And he said, "We like the Velvet Underground, man.
Nice.
That's real fucking music." And I was like, "I like them too." And he couldn't understand how I could like the Velvet Underground and Tommy James and the Shondells at the same time.
Well, my God, I hope neither of you ever told anyone that the Blue Album wasn't a Beatles LP.
Well, I did actually, James. I know where you're getting at, and I'm actually ashamed of that because I shamed a father in front of his son, which is something you should never do, because the father came in and was teaching his son about the blues and about rock and roll,
The Blue
and he was
Album.
going section to section. And he said, "Excuse me, sir," to me, "have you got the Beatles here?" And I said, "Yes, of course we do." And he said, "Now, son, I want you to know they made a lot of great albums, the Beatles, but the best..."
It's not wrong so far.
The best album is probably the Blue Album of all the albums they made. And I said, like a fool, I was 24, and he was with his young child, and I said, "Sir, the Blue Album is actually not a real album. It's a compilation." And he said, "Let me tell you, I was there."
Yeah.
From the 60s.
Yeah, I was there in the 60s, and when the Blue Album came out, that was revolutionary.
It was big, yeah.
And I argued with him, and his son started crying and ran out of the store, and I learned a lesson that day.
Yeah. Well, listen.
Well, how would you feel if someone said that to you about Weezer?
Yeah, exactly. Pinkerton said Pinkerton wasn't good. When we all know it's good, man. I think that, Johnny, you need to go for dinner. It's been one of the pleasures of my life. Catching up with you, Jason. Thanks. You're welcome on here anytime, man. It's been really, really nice, and thanks for kind of.
Before we go, could I just quickly know what Liam Gallagher thinks of Iggy Pop?
Fucking.
Thank you. I didn't think we were going to get to that. I think he thinks he's a tosser.
We've got him here, Jason, on the show.
Man. Fucking loves him.
What?
I fucking love him. I fucking love Iggy. 2 bands, mate. The Beatles and the fucking Stooges, yeah? That's it. That's fucking definitely maybe. We were fucking listening to fucking, fucking Rubber Soul, mate. Yeah, Rain. Just Rain, actually. We were just fucking listening to fucking Rain. And fucking I Want to Be Your Fucking Dog, man. I Want to Be Your Dog by the fucking Stone Roses. Well, actually, a major fucking rivalry between that song and I Want to Be Your Dog, mate. So, at the end of the day, I fucking love Iggy. I love Iggy. And I fucking love Ziggy.
That is so. That is so fucking cool, man. You had Liam on here. That is
it's awesome. Weird. Yeah. He just kind of. Well, you listen. You were channeling people here every day on a day-to-day basis.
Then. It's wonderful.
Johnny, have a really nice dinner. Jason, you come on anytime you're bored. Come on our podcast, and we'll just we can talk about this kind of stuff. It's really nice to catch up with you.